Thank you for listening to Scandinavian Crimes Podcast. Be sure to check out the episode links and be part of our other social media platforms where you can leave a topic suggestion or even share some of your insights regarding the subject matter of the episode. We will always do our best to provide a well-researched episode, but sometimes due to limited access to information and translation issues, some information can be lost. It is therefore good to do your own research and get a deeper understanding of a case of your own interest. So with that all said, let us start today's episode.
Welcome to another episode of Scandinavian Crimes. My name is Devante, and say hello to my lovely, beautiful host, Delila.
Hi.
And on this podcast, we talk about famous Scandinavian criminals who made their mark throughout Scandinavian history. So this one is more of a wrongful conviction. Of course, it's going to take place around, like the back in the day, the 50s, 60s, 70s, when, a lot of the precincts and police officers and detectives were running things like the Wild West. So this case follows Fritz Yngvar Moen, who endured an unjust conviction for 2 separate murders in Norway, spending a total of 18 years behind bars. Following the overturning of his conviction, an official investigation was launched to uncover the mishandling of his case by the authorities. On June 25th, 2007, the commission issued heavy criticism towards the police, the prosecution, and the courts, labeling it Norway's most egregious miscarriage of justice. Now, if you're a repeat listener, this is our bread and butter in terms of things like this happening, because especially when you hear the case, you're going to realize it's obvious. The answer is so obvious, but yet somehow it's just like they fumbled it ridiculously hard. So I really want you guys to listen to this one. So grab your tea, grab your coffee, wherever you are, just get in your little corner and let's really lock into this, because we're going to talk about the wrongful conviction of Fritz Moen. Fritz was born on December 17th, 1941. His birth parents were a Norwegian woman, Fritz Moen, and a German corporal named Fritz Robert Hellman, who served during Germany's occupation of Norway in World War II. Born deaf, Fritz faced abandonment by his mother, who entrusted him to an orphanage in June 1943. Tragically, Fritz's father died on the Eastern Front in 1944, never having a chance to meet his son ever again. Following Fritz's placement into the orphanage, his interaction with his mother drastically decreased over time and ended up with them having no contact. Betsy later remarried in 1947 and subsequently gave birth to 2 sons. Born nearly deaf, Fritz had no exposure to fellow deaf individuals between the ages of 1 and 8. During the critical early years when hearing children grasp language, nuanced concepts, Fritz lacked sufficient development opportunities, leading to his stunted growth. Deprived of typical social and linguistic stimulation during childhood, his growth and comprehension suffered severely, exacerbating his later struggles with social integration, language comprehension, as noted by psychologists and deaf interpreters. Fritz, despite being deaf with a severe speech impediment and partial paralysis, demonstrated normal intelligence and a strong memory. At the age of 36, Fritz was convicted in 1978 for the rape and murder of a 20-year-old Torunn Finstad in Trondheim. 4 days after her last sighting on October 2nd, 1977, Torunn's body was discovered showing signs of rape and strangulation. Fritz was apprehended the following day but asserted to the police that he had an alibi. Fritz had been with a group of people at a friend's birthday celebration on the night Torunn disappeared. Witnesses at the party confirmed Fritz's presence until the early hours of the morning. Skeptical of Fritz's alibi, the police subjected Fritz to intense and prolonged interrogations. Over the following weeks, Fritz's statements changed constantly, from staying until the party was over to leaving before the others. He would also say conflicting statements, switching between denial and admission of guilt, sometimes within the same interrogation session. Additionally, the details Fritz provided exhibited inconsistencies, often not corresponding with the crime nor the crime scene. Although Fritz provided several accurate details during the crime scene reconstruction where Toren's body was discovered, some were still very incorrect. Interestingly, the accurate details he provided matched those reported in newspaper articles which were public information by the time of the interrogations. There existed no physical or forensic evidence connecting Fritz to the crime. No witness observed him with Toren on the night of her disappearance. Consequently, his indictment relied on the presumption that his confession was indeed truthful, while his denials of involvement were deemed false. Despite having normal intelligence, Fritz faced challenges due to his deafness, necessitating an interpreter for effective communication. Additionally, his impaired right arm was noted, yet it was deemed insufficient to preclude his ability to potentially harm Toren. Fritz was indicted for this crime by the court on April 11, 1978. He received a 20-year prison sentence with an additional 10 years of post-release supervision on May 29th of the same year, which was later reduced to 16 years on appeal. Years after Fritz's initial conviction and while his lawyer contemplating petitioning to reopen Toren's case, Fritz found himself under repeated questioning regarding the unsolved strangulation and the attempted rape of the 20-year-old Sigrid Hegheim in Trondheim. Sigrid was found dead in September 1976 close to the area where Toren was murdered. There were a lot of similarities to Toren's case, hence why law enforcement was so keen to continue the investigation into Fritz. Fritz was purported to have confessed to the crime. Fritz, however, later retracted his confession, asserting it was coerced and made under duress. Despite this, his alleged confession served as a basis for charging him with Sigrid's murder and attempted rape. Later during the trial, the prosecutor was able to persuade the jury by discrediting the evidence in Fritz's alibi. The semen collected from the crime scene was identified as type A blood, which did not match with Fritz's blood type. The prosecution speculated that the reason for this was due to the presence of E. coli bacteria that might have influenced the false test result. Fritz's alibi was discounted by the prosecution even though the alibi was confirmed by the police. Fritz claimed that he had stayed overnight in the town approximately 45 miles from Trondheim and returned the afternoon after Sigrid was last seen alive. However, the prosecution argued that Sigrid could have still been alive after last being seen and spent the night with her in her student apartment, only to be in Trondheim the next day without anyone seeing her until Fritz returned to the city that afternoon. Fritz faced indictment for Sigrid's murder and attempted rape on September 15, 1981. He later was convicted and sentenced to an additional 5 years on December 19th of the same year, and it was to be served consecutively with his existing 16-year sentence. Fritz's confession to both of these crimes, which seemed to be coerced through intimidation, formed the basis of the prosecution's case. Upon Fritz's conviction, his defense attorney Olaf Hastenes declared it a travesty of justice. Judge Carl Solberg reacted vehemently to the outcome of the case, even applauding the court's verdict. It was later revealed that Carl's reputation became marred with instances of miscarried justice, notably in wrongful conviction of Atle Hage, a father accused of incest. Atle tragically ended his life after release from prison, only to be cleared a decade later when his children testified on his behalf. Fritz made an appeal, which was ultimately rejected, and upon his release in March 1996, after serving over 18 years in prison, he was placed under preventative supervision. Deemed to be a continued threat, a district court judge authorized his supervision for an additional 5 years in October 1999. For 2 decades, Fritz asserted his innocence. Then in the autumn of 1998, a psychiatrist at the prison where Fritz was serving his sentence reached out to the journalist and a private investigator, Tore Sandberg. Tore is renowned in Norway for his role in the exoneration of Per Leland, who had served 24 years for a double murder committed in 1969. Tore was familiar with Fritz's case, and he worked as a former television reporter for the Norwegian Broadcasting Corporation. He had covered the discovery of the victim's body in 1976 and 1977, as well as Fritz's 1978 trial. He was aware that Fritz's judge at the time, Carl, had presided over the wrongful conviction case of Atle Hage in 1984, which piqued Tore's interest. He held several meetings with Fritz, sensing that there might be flaws in his convictions. Having recently collaborated with Oslo attorney John Christian Elden on a successful exoneration case of a man wrongfully convicted of rape, Tore enlisted John's help to obtain the police investigation files. After reviewing the verdicts, the police files, and conversing with Fritz through the interpreter, Johan became convinced that the potential unsoundness of Fritz's conviction and agreed to represent him pro bono. During their investigation, Fritz's confession to both of these crimes formed the basis of the prosecution's case. Most evidence that was gathered at both the crime scene was unfortunately lost or destroyed, with the reasons for this remaining unclear. Nonetheless, Tore and John were able to find lots of flaws in the process of handling Fritz's convictions and continued to fight for justice. After a year of investigation, in the autumn of 1999, Tore convened a press conference in Trondheim to publicly disclose that he and John were exploring the possibilities of petitioning for the reopening of Fritz's case. Subsequently, in January 2000, John formally filed a petition to the Court of Appeal advocating for the official reopening of both murder cases. The petition, based on Tore's investigation, highlighted irregularities in Fritz's confession, deficiencies in the police investigation, the presence of exculpatory biological evidence, and the prosecution's failure to disclose favorable witness statements to Fritz's trial attorney. However, the prosecution opposed Fritz's petition, leading to its dismissal over 2 years later. John appealed this decision to Norway's Supreme Court of Appeals Committee in October 2003. The appeals committee found strong evidence suggesting that Fritz could potentially be innocent. They based their decision on the investigation that Tore and John had made. As a result, Fritz's conviction related to Sigurd's case were reopened, but the petition to reopen Toren's case was denied. A year later, on October 7, 2004, the Court of Appeal acquitted Fritz of the charges related to Sigurd's case. Less than a week later, Fritz filed a petition with a newly established Norwegian Criminal Case Review Commission to investigate his conviction with the Toren case. After conducting a preliminary assessment of Fritz's petition, the CCRC appointed attorney John to advocate on Fritz's behalf on November 2004. Tragically, 4 months later, Fritz passed away at the age of 63 while residing in a home for the deaf. Despite his demise, Fritz's half-brother wrote to the CCRC expressing the desire for the petition to be continued. As the CCRC continued to review the petition over the passing months, the case took an unforeseen and dramatic turn. Tore, Hepso, hospitalized due to declining health, confessed to 3 nurses on December 18, 2005, admitting to the murders of the 2 women. Following this revelation, the nurses contacted a priest and a local police in North Trøndelag County. Following this revelation, the nurses contacted a priest and local police in North Trøndelag County. The following day, Tore reiterated his confessions to the priest, 2 policemen, and hospital officials. He disclosed that he had murdered 2 women in Trondheim during the 1970s, specifically mentioning the names of both Sigrid and Toren. Despite his deteriorating state, Tore referenced Fritz's conviction for Sigurd's murder, although he appeared uncertain about certain details due to the purported intoxication at the time of the crimes. Tore passed away at the age of 67 the following day without providing a recorded or transcribed statement. However, 7 individuals witnessed his confession over the course of 2 days. Given the ongoing investigation into Fritz's case by the CCRC, authorities determined that they would investigate Tore's admission to ascertain their veracity. The CCRC conducted a comprehensive investigation into Tore's background. It was revealed that he resided in Trondheim during the years of 1976 and 1977, coinciding with the time frame of both murders. Additionally, through employment and other records, it was established that he was likely present in Trondheim on the days of each of the murders. Tore had a history of heavy drinking and had grappled with mental health issues throughout his adult years. He had been hospitalized for mental illness both before and after the time of the murders. In 1979, he was admitted to a psychiatric institution following a mental breakdown while working on the oil platform. Medical records revealed a history of anxiety and depression persisting until his demise. Despite his struggles with alcohol and mental health, the CCRC found no indication that Tore had ever experienced delusions or harbored a propensity to falsely confessing to a crime. In addition, the CCRC uncovered a disturbing incident on December 1986 when Tor's girlfriend reported to the police that he had subjected her to extreme violence from 1983 to 1986. She detailed instances where Tor had violently assaulted her, including choking her to the point of unconsciousness on multiple occasions. She also recounted instances of sexual assault and threats on her life. These violent actions closely mirrored what happened to Sigrid and Torun in their murders, with the exception of the girlfriend surviving the strangulation attempts. Charges were brought against Torun regarding the reported assaults on his girlfriend, yet they were ultimately dismissed due to insufficient evidence. She explained that during the assaults, she felt too fearful to seek medical attention or involve the authorities, and Tor denied the accusations when questioned. However, to corroborate her claims, the CCRC found significant evidence from Tor's medical records. In October 1987, while undergoing psychiatric care, Tor admitted to having been violent towards his partner, acknowledging that his actions had led to the end of their relationship. During the interviews with the CCRC, the witnesses whom Tor confessed to in the hospital affirmed the sincerity of Tor's admission. One witness even noted that it seemed imperative for Tor to resolve this matter before his passing. Following the completion of the investigation into Tor's confession, as well as his background, on June 15, 2006, the CCRC formally accepted Fritz's petition application and presented the findings to the Court of Appeals. In the report, the CCRC conducted a thorough examination of Fritz's confession in the Torun case, given its pivotal role in his conviction. They highlighted that it was based solely on publicly available information, considering Fritz's familiarity with the Trondheim area and details he could have acquired when taken to the crime scene by the police. Crucially, Fritz's confession lacked essential details and he failed to mention many of them. The CCRC asked linguistics expert Professor Wrongful to assess whether Moen's deafness led to communication challenges during his interaction with police interrogators and other authorities. Wrongful analyzed Fritz's statements in an official proceeding, and despite the presence of two interpreters to ensure accurate communication, Wrongful identified misunderstandings in Fritz's statement. This indicates that many of his remarks to the police during the investigation into Torun's case might have been misinterpreted. The same issue was observed in Sigrid's case as well. The CCRC also highlighted significant parallels between Sigrid and Torun's cases, emphasizing they both shared the same modus operandi. The victims, young women returning home from a students' union in Trondheim at night, were closely linked in time and the crime scenes were nearby. Furthermore, both cases involved both sexual abuse and head injuries, with the victims found with cords on their outer jackets around their throats. These striking similarities led Fritz's conviction in both cases, and Tor's confession aligned with the evidence suggesting they were perpetuated by Tor. 2 months after the CCRC forwarded Fritz's case, on August 24, 2006, the Court of Appeals cleared him of rape and murder charges concerning Torun. The successful acquittals are largely credited to the efforts of Fritz's defense lawyer John and the private investigator Tore. With both murder accusations nullified, Fritz's case emerged as a glaring example of Norway's most egregious miscarriage of justice. Following the acquittal, Fritz's legal team initiated a civil suit against the Norwegian government seeking $28 million in damages. In April 2008, the case settled, with the presiding judge awarding 20 million Norwegian crowns. The lawsuit sparked extensive public discourse in Norway, prompting calls for an official investigation into the actions of the prosecutors and police. Following Fritz's exoneration, Norway swiftly established a commission to investigate his wrongful convictions. The commissions exhaustively inquired and uncovered 3 key factors: the failure of the police and prosecution to objectively assess the evidence, the lack of impartiality from the prosecution's expert witness, and the disregard for the principle of innocence until proven guilty by both the prosecution and the trial court. Additionally, the Trondheim police were criticized for their incompetence and biased reporting of the case, including the failure to disclose crucial evidence like Sigrid's diary, which contradicted Fritz's involvement in the first place. The Norwegian Parliament's Control and Constitution Committee recommended an investigation into the circumstances surrounding the Supreme Court's rejection of Fritz's petition to reopen his convictions. They also considered impeachment charges against the 3 justices involved. Despite criticism of the judge's conduct during Parliament debate, no charges were officially filed against him, and the case was closed on May 27, 2008. The inquiry's findings advised against singling out individual police or judicial officers for responsibility, as such actions were deemed likely to diffuse accountability.
Before we start with the discussion, I would like to pinpoint some things. There were information available, but there were only some articles that were available to read and information. So we would just like to make sure that you know that this is only limited information, but it was still a lot of information available online regarding that if you live in Norway or close by. If you don't, it's going to be hard for you. I'm sorry. Either way, this case was, and also the cases involved and mentioned throughout this whole reading, there were open a lot of opportunities for many wrongfully convicted after this, and also they did change a lot of the injustices in general and thoroughly investigated after this case, many authorities and everything like that. So this case actually changed a lot of and exposed a lot of injustices and corruption within the law enforcement and the court of law. So this case was really meaningful, and that's why I think it's important that we talk about it. I know, Devante, that you love this type of topic of wrongfully convicted. And I just want to ask you, what are your point of view when listening to this case? What did you think was this is so, what were your thoughts, basically?
Well, initially reading the case, one of the primary thoughts, I always think this about wrongful convictions, but especially in this one, the answer is so obvious.
Yeah.
He had partial paralysis. He doesn't even have strength in one of his hands to strangle somebody. And it's obvious. This is not like it was hidden, and it was plain as day. You can see him. Oh, this person has a disability. There's no way this person could have done it. But in their heads, they're just he must have did it. Or this is my personal opinion, of course. I'm just gonna cut to the chase and give y'all my opinion. I think they was looking for someone who's an easy scapegoat, because that was very common back in the day, where it wasn't necessarily about actually finding who did it. They was trying to just solve the case and put someone under the bus and be like, oh yeah, we solved it, when in reality they didn't even there was nothing linking him to the crime scene. And the fact that they had forensic evidence saying the blood type, what was it, blood type A or something like that?
Yeah, and it was it wasn't matching his blood type. Yeah.
So I'm he was disabled, not the same blood type. What? It's literally it's an easy, that's not him. That was so easy, so simple. And somehow,
and also what they said later on when they investigated, that the cords and twisting around the neck and stuff, and I'm that is such a hard thing to do for somebody who is partially paralyzed. I can just only imagine, and having the strength to overpower a person as well, it just sounds very, I don't know. I just feel they just kind of you're a man, you're able to do that to a woman, and then not really thinking about other things that might have been harder for him. And on top of that, he had alibis too. It was so many things going on here, basically. It's like
someone saying 2 + 2 is 4, and then they're just no, it's 7. Mm-hmm. No, it's 4. No, it's 7.
Yeah.
And then having people reinforce it in the court, and they just took it at face value. As a prosecutor, wouldn't you look at that case file and be this doesn't make sense? But I guess during the times, it didn't even matter, because... And the prosecutor
also basically diminishing every evidence that was available too. Saying that, but it could be E. coli that could make that happen.
That doesn't even make sense.
And I was what?
Anyone with a basic high school education, not middle school education, E. coli, no, that doesn't make any sense.
I was just what is
I'm not
going
gonna lie.
on?
I don't care how people feel about this. The jury's stupid for believing that. Are you serious?
But he was also biased. One of them, at least. I mean, most of them were very biased for some reason. I don't know why. I mean, it could be, we might know why the reason is that, but we'll talk about that later. it's just like there was so many things, no evidence attached to Fritz. No, he had alibis, he had proof. The only thing that made it impossible for him was because he couldn't express himself properly because of him being deaf and stuff like that. And he didn't even have interpreter. Yes. He didn't even have that during interrogation most of the time, and they had prolonged interviews. They basically kind of have questionings in a way where it's just, we talked about that in previous episodes where they do that when they talk about like when they basically, it's like borderline torture when you interrogate for somebody like that for a long period of time, many times asking the same things, just trying to twist the words of the person until he says something of the line of confession, and then he'd be like, got you, and then
they're guiding him, like basically like, I didn't do this. Well, maybe you in the area, like it is close to
yes,
such and such. I mean, it is close to such and such. Like they're trying to guide him to the answer.
Exactly. So, and because of that, that's the only reason that made him imprisoned for 18 years. It was nothing else that could have made it possible for him to do that. And it's just sad to see stuff like that, basically. And I don't know. I just feel very sad about the whole thing. And he also died before even before
he was even cleared fully.
Yeah.
He only was able to get one of the charges dropped. That Sigrid,
I don't think
murder was able to get dropped.
I think he died. Oh wait, he died before. He died after being cleared of Sigrid.
He died after Sigrid's charges got dropped. But then,
Torrent was the worst one.
That one they refused to. That was the one they refused to, like, oh nah, he did it. And it's so crazy because like, but also one thing I'm pretty sure you was about to like bring up at some point is during this time period when the crimes were taking place, people had a lot of bias and feelings against people with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know what it was. Like, people just felt like, because I remember even back in the day when polio was a thing, people was acting like, oh my God, you're the devil. Like it's a disability. Like, what? It doesn't really affect anything else outside
basically
of just them.
Ableism. They kind of just like, and this is really harsh ableism. Like, they basically were like, you can't speak. You're like, even his parents was like, oh my God, you're different. And kind of like, here.
Well, his dad died, so we don't know about that.
I'm not saying about the dad part. Like, the dad was probably just a soldier. Like, he might have not even been available during the time like he was born. Like, I don't know. I don't know the situation of the dad, but the mom was like, this is different. No, and then kind of just like abandoned him. So there might have been or it could have been. Yeah. He did. She did. Okay.
That's a crazy thing. I'm not gonna lie. I don't mean to redirect the
conversation.
But the thing is, like, that's crazy.
The thing is, back then they might have just been like, what is wrong with this child? And like, they might have not had the information about being like deaf. It doesn't change anything. It's just like lack of hearing, like being able to hear properly. But I think that's basically where it comes from. It's ableism to the highest of the highest. Like, they were basically pinpointing him. And I think it's because of his, like, partially being paralyzed, like everything, just him being different. And it's sad that he didn't really have a normal childhood, basically, because he couldn't really grow his skills, social skills, and, learning maybe sign language and stuff like that. Stuff like that really can't hurt a child in their growth. So it's sad that they didn't really have the knowledge and they didn't really take care of him. And this happened to him. He was a pure victim.
Mm-hmm. And then lost so much of his life to a terrible mom and the system, and then another system of being convicted of something he didn't do.
I don't know if the mom was terrible. I think it was probably because she didn't really know better. She was like, this is different. No, I don't want this. And this is wrong with the child. It's, I don't know how it was back then. I think it was mostly because she didn't know any better and she didn't want to take care of that.
I would say sure. Like, I know it. I'm not saying she's, well, I'll say she's horrible, but not. It was horrible out of ignorance.
I mean, she had two other kids with another man. But
that's what I was about to say. I was like, and then I don't know if she even reached out or tried to reach out, or I don't know if she has regrets about the situation. I don't know. She didn't even really try and like. Yeah, I'm like, but that's also my like kind of thought, because I don't see anything
Basically,
regarding like,
she didn't
she
really
tried to reach out because maybe she felt guilty
But the brothers
later,
did, though.
which is a sign
I guess
that,
they
okay,
had some
maybe I
type
was
of
wrong back then.
communication
But
with him.
whatever.
Maybe, I don't know.
Even then, that's a problem, but that comes from ignorance. At the time, that was just a very ignorant thought that people just didn't put two and two together. But in general, like, I can't say I have a lot to say because I feel like this is so simple. The police failed.
I can actually say stuff, though, regarding if you want to know more about the biological evidence that wasn't mentioned in the whole reading. You do know, like, oh my god, this is going to be a ride, I mean. But, like, the blood typing thing was not really the main point that incriminated Fritz. It was just because the prosecutioner was just, like, kind of really was leading everything, the evidence was said, to something else just to diminish it, and that's why nobody cared about the evidence. So, and that's like the biological evidence was also lost, most of them, or they were destroyed, or they just like disappeared. Nobody knows where they are. But Tore and John was actually asking medical experts for help, and they did. And the medical expert that did the autopsies and stuff like that, and they showcased that like this is not Fritz at all. So even though the evidence and everything was lost, they still were able to like gather information regarding what other people have like done and research of this whole thing. And regarding there was also things that
there's no bees, only peas.
I can't talk.
Are you referring to the biological material recovered from the crime scenes?
The too many P's and B's, and I can't do it. Yeah, I know there's two P's, and I can't say the perpetrator. Yes. And basically, to summarize everything, it was from the perpetrator, which
I guess
did not match
personally,
Fritz, is what I was trying to say, but everything is too many P's and E's and stuff, and I couldn't really say it, so I give up. Oh yeah, I forgot to say. Oh wait, I need to say something too. Sorry, I am so sorry. Tor, the actual perpetrator, had evidence where he put stuff in his Bible before he passed away. So there were written violent tendencies that he wrote in the Bible that also, was very concerning, and
but they didn't.
Additional evidence to prove that Fritz wasn't really the guy.
Slap.
So they could have investigated Tor back in the day when his girlfriend got hurt and strangled close to the area. But because they were like, there's not enough evidence for him to do that to you, miss. And she's like, okay. And then she was afraid to get help. And it was just
hard. So easy.
I feel bad for her too.
So easy to be like, okay, it wasn't this dude. They made no effort. And it wasn't even just like the police failed. It was like the police failed, the prosecution failed, the court failed. I'm like, 3 layers of dumbassness.
It was...
I'm like, that's... Like, here, he's not the person you're looking for. And it was just like, he's definitely the person I'm looking for.
Oh, yeah.
It has to be him.
It was served on not a silver platter. It was served on a gold diamond platter. Like, here you are. For a fact
it was looking for someone as a scapegoat. So
it's him. Yeah, it's crazy.
I'm already stressed. But anyway, when you're hearing this, let us know what you think about this whole
Ignorance,
case. Let us know if you're from the area
ableism,
and then you know about the case as well, and kind of give us some more insight. Maybe there's some information we don't have. Maybe there's some information we missed. Maybe there's some information that got mistranslated. Whatever the case may be, if you're from the area, let us know what's going on, your thoughts. And this is just ridiculous, So like maybe
also,
like a little bonus. Like,
if you guys want more information about the
episode, something like
Target
that at one
case,
point,
we could do like a small little reading thing
just to lighten
for
things
some
up,
other episode.
You already
it's
know
not a lot of
usual
information about him, but
a repeat listener.
We could do that.
A
little bonus.
Yeah, happy
episode.
Easter. Well, at least by the time this comes out, Easter would have passed. But I hope you had a happy Easter. And I'm gonna get a ham and cheese on a roll.
Easter.
If you know. I'm gonna get an orange drink.
So something Easter-ish. I don't know.
But nonetheless, I am going to hand it over to Delila.
I can't hear you. I don't know why I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
But regardless, I hope you guys had
I can't hear you. I think your AirPod died.
You can just say your part for like what you want to eat. I already finished mine.
Okay, I can hear you now. I would like, you know what? I'm gonna actually say what I'm gonna eat for Easter. So I'm gonna have injera with some tahi and some other things as well, hamali and stuff like that. And then I'm also gonna have some lamb and some potato, and yeah, it's really good. And some other thing, fish as
that sounds good. That sounds good as
yes.
Yeah.
It's like a mix of my traditions and also Easter traditions.
Love.
Yeah.
And stay safe out there, my friends. And we will, happy Easter. Or out.